Buenos dias. It is Conchita, and I am here for you today, surprising you for the first time, but not the last time today. Today, we are flying from here, where it is very cold, all the way over to the other side, where it is very warm, and where we all want to be. And we are flying aboard Sociedad de Aeronauticas Executive Class. I am, of course, your executive class attendant. Now, before we take off, it is very important to explain to you some of the rules. First of all, we like to keep the chickens in the little racks up above the heads at all times. The burros are at the front of the plane, and the goats are in the back in the goat area. As you know, when you fly from here all the way to the other side, you must fly over the mountains, which are very high. And sometimes when you go very high in the sky, you must be very careful to avoid a collision with the mountains. And so everyone must be very alert, very awake, very facing the front, and thinking every minute. In case you can't breathe so good, that is very bad. If you can't breathe so good, you are not focused on the purpose, which is to avoid the mountains, which I mentioned previously. In case you can't breathe so good, sometimes there is going to be a little thing. It's come out of the sky here, the ceiling. You're going to put that on your face, and you're going to breathe through that, okay? Okay? Good to know. Because if you don't, you could pass out, and then you would miss the vacation, which is why we are here, guys. But of course, now, one last thing, there is one more thing to know, and that is that sometimes on the floor of the plane, you may notice amongst the feet a creepy crawly. Do not worry about him. He is our national emblem. He is La Cucaracha. And I, of course, will be taking care of him during the entertainment. La Cucaracha, La Cucaracha, la 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 la, ole. So, I thought I would surprise you with a little visit from Conchita today because, you know, I looked out the window this morning and I said, well, the sky and the snow and the pavement are the same color, and there goes a gray car. Why do people who live in places like this buy gray cars? Wouldn't you buy a yellow one or I don't know, a red one or something that had a little something going on? No, they seem to buy gray cars, so you can't even see them when you park against the sky, snow, pavement. Which is why, by the way, the wall in my office here is painted this soft kind of butter yellow. I did that deliberately because the whole gray everything tends to weigh heavily on my joy factor. And in this moment, the joy factor is not doing that well for most of us. We're having a real problem. And one of the problems that we're having is people choosing to become an expert without much training, much like Conchita, the people, you know, who run the plane. They think they become an expert because they want to become an expert. They think that because they have an idea that makes them an expert and everyone will listen to them. I've known this a long time. And yesterday I had to go and get groceries, and the bright young thing at the counter said, "Oh my God, I love your hair." And I said, "Well, thank you very much. I love your nails." And she said, "Oh, I just had them done because I'm going to go for a job interview." It's not really a job interview. I'm taking a course. I'm going to be a life coach. She was, I'm going to say 22. Now, I am the last person to suggest that you could reach the age of 22 without learning a whole lot of surprising things about life. I know that I did, but time I was 20. So good on her if she actually has something to share. But I had the feeling that really her strengths were going to be where to get individual lashes done and nails and the whole new cute, really interesting thing about the ombre shading of all the colors underneath your hair. She didn't really seem to have a lot of layers to her other than the hair thing. And this brings me to something that is really upsetting a lot of people. It is this unsolicited advice coming from people who have no idea who you are really and what you have managed to wade through to get to where you are in this moment, and whether or not you're hanging on by a thread or your teeth or you're fine, or today is one of those banner days where everything is fine. They don't have the slightest idea about you. Because they're too busy thinking how clever they are, and they're going to tell you everything about how to live a better life, their version of a better life. And so I thought, I'm going to talk about that. I've been leaning into it, and I'm going to continue to lean into it, because I think this is where we all need to consider a good thing to be doing. And not telling people to take their ideas someplace where the sun doesn't shine. Not that, because we don't need to do that. But to recognize something about ourselves. And the thing is this: the buzzword change. Be the change. You have to change. Really one of the dumber things that people can say, because you don't have to be the change. We are the change. Awake and asleep, every minute we're changing. Even when we die, we're changing. Change is who we are. Be aware of your change choices. Sure. My dad used to say, you see that unshaven creature over there? Yes, Daddy. Promise me you'll never break your mother's heart. Never bring one of those home. I thought that might be an interesting change. Apparently it wasn't going to be helpful. Change is how we survive. Sun goes up, sun goes down. Shadows move. Earth rotates. Things fall off. Things get fixed. Things grow. Things diminish. We gain weight if we are superheroes of change. We are the change generation. So please, don't tell me to change. I already know all about it. I wrote the book. Would you like an autographed copy? The other word that people are misusing, and I think with all humility, of which there's Viking, so humility, the word pivot that people are using now a lot. They started writing books about it, life coaches and change coaches and empowerment coaches and motivational coaches. They all started writing about pivot. And they're telling people they need to pivot. They need to learn to pivot. They need to be ready to pivot. And the only thing wrong with that is that they are facing the wrong way, and they're asking us to face the wrong way. Because we don't need to learn to pivot. We pivot all the time. Our challenge is that we're not really aware that we're pivoting. We don't know that we have this incredible ability. We have no idea. No one has pointed it out to us. Back in the day when I used to coach people who wanted to speak in public in front of breathing humans who paid to come in, I would try to distract them from the anxiety of the moment about to happen by saying something that appeared to be a non sequitur. So one of the best examples was this very, very successful, however nervous at public speaking, male CEO. and he had paid a great deal of money to have me come and train him. And so I did. I'm sorry, again, looking down, Tulu FPS. I gave him a lot of pointers that he found very helpful, and they're all based on the one thing I know how to do, which is walk out in front of an audience and look them in the eye and tell them what I feel they probably want to hear. And then, while they're nodding and smiling that they heard the thing they were hoping to hear, I can sneak in my own little message. That's Viking Strategy 101. And so we had done very well, and he was now nervous because all of a sudden here it is, and he's trying to remember everything I've told him. And just before he walked out there in front of a lot of people who paid a lot of money to come in, he said, "What do I do with my hands?" I said, "Pardon?" And he said, "What do I do with my hands?" And I said, "What do you usually do with your hands?" He said, "What kind of stupid question is that?" And I said, "I think it's a reasonable question because you've had your hands longer than I've had your hands. In fact, I've never had your hands. I know what I do with my hands." and he said, "I'm about to go out there and I want you to tell me what to do with my hands." And I said, "Put them under each arm." He said, "For God's sake." And he walked out there. And he walked out there with the kind of energy that would normally make grown men tremble. He walked out to the podium, and he leaned on the podium, and he said, "Before I start telling you the thing I came here to say, I want to say this about this so-called coach I hired, who..." And then he realized that he wasn't nervous anymore, and he knew exactly what to do with his hands. And he stood there with his arm outstretched, pointing at me in the wings. And I was standing there smiling with my arms folded. And he said to me, "You're very sneaky." And I said, "Thank you." And he turned back and he gave his speech. And he was great, because of course he was great. He was great with or without me. What he needed was someone to remind him that who he is and what he knows are why people are there. Not what he does with his hands. Not whether his pocket who's it thingy is crooked. They came to hear from him. They came to better about their chances, survival and happiness and everything. And this is the thing we don't ever consider when we are faced with strange days and times. That whatever is thrown at us, please, we have been through this so many times. We just don't remember it because we didn't write it down. We were busy. We were in the middle of tap dancing away from the edge of the cliff. We were saying, "Whoa, alligator!" And we were coming up with plan B. We didn't retain how that worked. We didn't sit back and do a debriefing and figure out where we went inside our heads to be good at this. We don't need to pivot to succeed at something. We have all the tools. What we need to realize is that every face that we have prepared to meet each challenge in life, and I've said this before and I'll say it many times, every person we ever were is still there, is still part of who we are. Just as Conchita, who was one of my favorite characters in a fabulous stage show, is always with me. Just as Cynthia Cook, the E is silent, will always be with me. Just as Mom, hello dear, did you wash your hands? Will always be with me. Every other person I've been is right here. I only need to know how to pivot to find them, how to invite them to join me to help me figure out what the hell this is and what I do about it. How I bring the most equipped, the best ready version of me and put them in front of me so I can stand in the back and let them go, run with it, win. That's the job. That's the pivot. I don't have to pivot to embrace something new. I have to hold out my hand. Imagine that incredible diamond that has all those facets. And each of those facets is one of me. And say, all right, come on, pivot. Where's the one I need? There you are. All right, go for it. Do it. So that I can be exactly who I needed to be. I'm going to give you a brief story. It's not really a story, it's a summary of the faces that I had to create by explaining what happened to me in a 2-year period from the time I was 20 until I was 22. 2 years. Ready? Okay. So, when I was 20, my dad retired from the military. He said he was never going to shovel snow again, so we went to live in Florida. I went to attend junior college. I discovered on my first day in English class that they were using my 10th grade textbooks. And the teacher said, I can't grade you, because if I give you the grade you really deserve, I have to fail everyone else. Go see the dean. I went to see the dean, and he said, that's a shame, I was going to put you on the honor roll. But you're right, we have no place for you here. We can't automatically send you up to final year, because there's too many steps you'll miss along the way. So the girl who was eager to go to college, because she'd finished high school with fairly decent grades, was rejected. I drove home. I didn't know what to do. I hadn't had a plan B. I told my dad, and he said, well, then I guess you need to get a job. What do you like to do? I said, read. He found me a job working for a magazine publishing company. It was the kind of thing where they sold a lot of publications to people unsuspecting in their homes, and then when the spouse got home and realized that whoever was the domestic half of the partnership had signed up for 3 years of Life, Look, Ladies' Home Journal, Field and Stream, they picked up the phone and called customer service. My job was customer service. What that really was the complaint department. How people called the complaint department was they picked up the phone and they ran around the house yelling while they dialed, so that when I answered and said, publications, customer service, I got a full-on rant. Full-on. Yell, 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 until they had to breathe. And I would interrupt and say, would you like to speak to my supervisor? Yes! And I'd put them on hold. And I'd go away and I'd make a coffee and I'd come back. And I'd alter my voice. I'd drop it. Yes, my name is Mrs. McGillicuddy, and I am the senior thingamahoosid of whatnot. And I would calm the person down in about 5 seconds flat. Because all they really wanted was to be heard. They wanted someone in charge to know that they were not going to take that kind of treatment. And they'd get their money back. I was a totally other me than the little girl who got rejected from her first day in college. Totally different me. About the third weekend, I was beginning to show the strain of having people yell at me all day long. And one of the girls working there said that she was head of the department up in New York City, and would I like to come and work for her, because I was really good at my job. So I went home and I said to my dad, what do you think? And he said, absolutely. I'll pay for your apartment. because I was going to pay for your college, and I'll help you buy a car. You can have anything under whatever price was the going rate for all the small cars. And I thought, well, that's good. So I went to New York. And in record time, I discovered that this woman and I didn't get along, and also I was allergic to her cat, which was deaf. So I couldn't yell at it and achieve anything. And so every morning I would wake up with all the symptoms of a cold that would clear up gradually through the morning, and then she would yell at me all the way home, and it was awful. So I called my dad again, and I said, what do I do? And he said, find another job. So I did. I went to a placement agency, and they took one look at me, and they said, oh my God, we know exactly where we're going to send you. And they gave me this address, and I, took a cab, and I got there, and I walked into the building, and I looked at the thing at 7th floor, and I pressed the button, and the elevator went up to the 7th floor, and the door opened, and I stepped into the lobby of Playboy magazine on Park Avenue. And the girl at the desk picked up the phone, Playboy magazine, may I help you? One moment, please. And then transferred the call and said, hi, how's it going? And I said, I'm here to see the head of advertising. And his phone rang, and he said, if you find the phone and answer it before it stops ringing, I'm going to hire you. So I looked down, found the jack on the wall, traced the cord up, threw papers off the desk, picked it up and said, looked at the door, Mr. So-and-so secretary, may I help you? One moment, please. Put him on hold. And the guy said, you're good. So I got the job. That's not the end of the story. I was there for 2 months. He called me into his office. First thing, one morning. Sat me down. And he said, okay, I have some really tough news for you. And I want you to know that when I tell you this, we have your back. That's a little alarming. I said, okay. He said, the police contacted me an hour ago. And it's my job to tell you that your father has died and your mother is in a hospital in Victoria, British Columbia. They want you to go to Miami. We'll pay for your expenses. So I went. And I dealt with the funeral arrangements. And I cleaned up the house. And I sold it. And I sold the car. And then I got on a flight and I went to Victoria, British Columbia. And I found my mother, who had been declared okay-ish, staying with her sister. And I said, I have an apartment in New York and I have a job I have to go back to. You can come with me. She couldn't come that day. She said she would come in a couple of days. So I flew back to New York and I ordered a second bed for what was kind of my office. And then I went to work and I told my boss. And he said, whatever you need. And my mother arrived. And for the first time in my life, I had a roommate. And she was kind of okay, and yet not okay. And eventually she said, New York isn't where I want to be. I need to go back to Miami, and I need to find myself. So she left, and I kept working. And one day, I got groped on the subway. And I went to work and I said, I can't do this. And he said, my dear wonderful boss, I understand. What are you going to do? And I said, well, there's a restaurant bar right up the street. I think maybe I'll just see if I can get a job. And he said, do you want me to talk to the owner? No, I'm good. So I got a job working in a local bar in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn. And a fellow who wanted to take me out for dinner one day borrowed my car because he didn't have a car. And he drove it to where he lived with his parents, and he went inside to change, and while he was inside changing, a tree fell on my car and crushed it. And he had to call and tell me that. So I called my boss at Playboy, and we got the problem resolved. And my mother called from Florida and said, I think you should come and live with me. I've become a model. It's a lot of fun, and the sun shines every day. So I drove the car from New York to Florida, and I stayed there with my mother for a year. And then I said, you know what, I really want to go home. I really want to go home. And she said, me too. So we came home to Canada. And I went back to college, and I got my degree, partly. And while I was there, one of my college teachers, who became my mentor, said, you need to be in show business. And I said, how bad can it be, really? What's the worst that can happen? And I got a show, and I won an award, and my series got canceled. And my best friend said, never mind, I'm working on a show for children. They need someone like you to be their mom. And the rest is history. How many alter egos do you think I created in that 2-year period? How many? Can I call them all up? Oh yeah. Do they serve me well? You bet. I'm not crying because I'm sad. I'm crying because I survived. I survived, and I am surviving. Just like you. Just like all of us. The thing I knew before today is how it's done. I knew about the alter egos. And now, so do you. So do you. And you have as many as I do. All you need to do is decide to spend some time remembering who they are. Remembering the ones that didn't do that good a job. Remembering the ones that did. Remembering the times you didn't think you could make it through one more day of whatever this is. And you did. Thanks to your alter egos. So, you don't need to learn to pivot. You are a pivot master. I think we should all wear capes, frankly, because we have found a way to get from all the way over there to all the way over here, over above all the mountains, whether you can breathe or not. And here we are, together, you and I. And we're safe. We're good. So whatever next thing is coming, and something always is, that's how life works, we have an alter ego to meet it head on and show it who's boss. Okay, that's it for now. Did you like my hat? I love my hat. I want you to do 2 things for me until we talk again next week. One is I want you to be good to you, because you deserve it. And the other is, I want you to spend a little time to see how many of your alter egos you can identify. Think how many I had in 2 years. You're no different. We're really all the same. Be safe. Let the idiots just run on through. Channel your best version of you. And I'll see you next time.